Edgewood University. Year 1. Episode 17. Calling. Everyone you encounter leaves an impression on you, whether it be good, bad, negative, or positive. We are left with a mark on our hearts. So what are you going to do about your father? asked Faith, running her hands through Tyler's hair. They were in the sitting room, on one of the couches, and Tyler had just come from his father's office. Faith had her foot propped on the coffee table, and he leaned back, resting his head in her lap. Well, I could kill him again, he suggested, and Faith chuckled. I don't know, Faith. I'm still trying to figure this shit out. Why did my mother resurrect him in the first place? Faith sighed and rubbed the inside of her cheek with her tongue. The strange thing is Peter's eyes didn't change after he killed her, and if she were an innocent, his eyes would have turned blue. Maybe my mother wasn't innocent, but I still don't trust him. She ran her fingers gently through his hair, and he touched her face. I thought we were going to keep it casual, he asked, and she shrugged. Fuck it. I like you. And if my brother is actually ready to commit to a girl, then why can't we? He smiled, rubbing her cheek with his thumb, and she grinned. I like you too. She smiled, bent her head, and kissed him sweetly. Tyler held the back of her head and kissed her back. They jumped when the suite door swung open and looked up. Connor stormed into the small apartment, and Layla was right behind him. Connor? She said, and he turned toward her. He growled with silver eyes, went into her bedroom, and shut the door. Fine, be a fucking baby. She sighed, throwing her hands in the air and plopping on the other couch. She rubbed her face and put her head in her hands. What's with him? I'd never seen him growl at you before, asked Tyler. Layla picked up her head, made a face, and faced her door. Werewolf PMS, she yelled. Tyler and Faith snickered, and a low warning growl came from Layla's room. I heard that, he yelled, and Layla scoffed. Good, you were meant to. That means your ears work. Faith tried not to laugh, and Tyler covered her mouth, putting his finger to his lips. Connor popped his head out of the room and looked at Layla angrily. Do your eyes work? You can see I'm clearly not in the mood for your bullshit, Layla. He growled, and Layla pressed her lips together, trying to hide a smile. He was so sexy when he was angry, and his deep voice sent shivers down her spine. She cleared her throat and straightened. My bullshit? Oh, okay. I clearly see an old man acting like a child and throwing a fit. All because you let that whack job put shit in your head, but you know what you have to do, she said, rolled her eyes, and snickered. Honestly, I think it's cute and amusing. Tyler snorted, and Faith covered his mouth, shaking her head. Eesh. Amusing? You think this is funny? Connor asked, raising an eyebrow, and Layla blurted out laughing. No! She snorted, shaking her head. He stared at her with glowing crimson eyes as he walked toward her, and she moved backward, raising her hands. Connor, please. I was just joking. I surrender. She snorted, unsure what he would do. Without a word, he grabbed her shoulders, growled, and held her above his head. Layla looked at him momentarily, and Connor winked and smirked, showing sharp teeth. She squealed and made her body go limp. Dead weight! Cheered Tyler, and Connor almost dropped Layla. She laughed as he set her down, and Tyler grinned. What was that? It was like you turned into a cooked noodle, said Connor, and Layla laughed. Dead weight is a game, Tyler, and I used to play as kids with our dads, she said as she trailed off and looked at her hands. It's fine. So, what did the asshole say? Make you mad? Asked Tyler. Layla looked at Connor, and he sat on the couch. She was about to sit beside him when he pulled her into his lap and wrapped his arms around her. He sighed and looked at Tyler. I don't understand why your mother would choose to resurrect Peter, of all people. So many good werewolves died protecting their packs. Why him? He sighed, and Layla rested her head on his chest. Tyler sat up, moved to the end of the couch, and Faith leaned against him. I thought you and my father go way back. We do. We just never seen eye to eye or have been on the same side, breathed Connor, and Faith gave her brother a questioning look. What about that night at the bar when Mom was still alive? You reasoned with him then, and it worked. He was after the mountain packs, and you got him to stop. Can't you reason with him again? He looked at his sister sadly and rubbed his face. Do you remember who we lost that day because I stopped him from killing those packs? With Peter, there's always a hidden message or price. He growled, and Layla smirked. She loved it when he growled and he didn't have to be mad. The deep undertone was music to her ears, and since Connor surrendered to her, the tone was hers. She was the only one who could hear it, and the growl calmed the feline beast within. "You're not wrong," said Tyler, and Connor nodded. Layla took Connor's hand and played with his fingers. She turned her head, and he looked at her thoughtfully. "I'm sorry for what I said earlier," she whispered, and he touched her face. "All is forgiven, my gorgeous, fiery alpha," he said, taking her hand and kissing the back. She blushed and snorted. "Why do you do things like that?" she asked, and he gave her an intrigued look. "Like what?" "Kiss my hand, hold a door, fly me away at the first sign of danger," she said, making a face, and he laughed. "Because a man is always supposed to treat his mate with kindness, dignity, and grace." Layla giggled and ran her fingers through his beard. "So, I'm your mate?" Connor held her face, kissed her softly, and looked into her eyes. "My mate, my girlfriend, my best friend, maybe someday my lover," he purred, and her heart melted. He saw her eyes fill with tears and rubbed her cheeks with his thumbs. "I better work on that last one, huh?" She snickered, and he laughed, shaking his head. "There's no rush." Faith and Tyler smiled at them, and he kissed her neck. Layla kissed Connor, bit his bottom lip, and leaned against his chest. He blew a breath and squeezed her tight. "Keep doing that, and we may have to expedite the process," he whispered, and she blushed. "So, what are we going to do about our Peter situation?" asked Faith and Tyler, Connor, and Layla thought momentarily. "We need a plan. Call the rest of the pack," said Tyler, and Layla looked at him oddly. "What pack?" Tyler looked at Connor, and Connor shrugged. "The two supernatural creatures, Bailey and Cassidy. Believe it or not, we're a pack," said Tyler. Layla nodded and pulled her phone out. Connor, Faith, and Tyler looked at her and then at each other, laughing. "What are you doing?" asked Faith, and Layla gave her a strange look. "He's calling Cassidy and Bailey? That's what phones are for," she said, and Connor took her phone. "Connor?" He gave her a thoughtful look and touched her face. "Let me show you," he said. They got up and Connor roared deeply. Her ears perked up as she heard the alpha call in the undertone of his roar and looked at him with shimmering eyes. "That was sexy as hell," she said, and Connor blushed. "That's how you call your pack," said Faith, and Layla nodded. "Try it, Lay," said Tyler. Connor grinned and gave her an encouraging look. "You got this, babe. Clear your mind and think of Cassidy and Bailey," he said, touching her arm. Layla nodded, closed her eyes, and cleared her mind. She imagined the Mind Fairy and the Banshee sitting in the dining hall, laughing and talking. She inhaled a deep breath and opened crimson, glowing eyes. She felt Connor lean into her ear, and his scent invaded her nose. "Let it go, babe," he whispered. Layla roared a mighty, deep feline roar, and Connor, Tyler, and Faith smiled proudly, hearing the alpha call. Cassidy, Bailey, Alex, and Cody were in the dining hall when they heard Layla's and Connor's call. "What was that?" asked Bailey, noticing the other students going about their business like they didn't hear anything. Cody and Alex immediately rose from the table and gathered their things. "What are you guys doing?" asked Cassidy. "That was the alphas calling their pack," said Alex, and Bailey looked at him oddly. "But why did me and Cassidy hear it? We're not werewolves," she snorted, and Cody gave her a thoughtful look. "You two are connected with Layla, and our alphas need us," he said, giving them a let's go look. Cassidy and Bailey nodded and gathered their things, and then the two werewolves, the Banshee and the Mind Fairy, headed to the suite. "Did I do it?" asked Layla and Connor, Faith, and Tyler nodded. Layla grinned, folded her hands, and looked at Connor through her eyelashes. "How will we know it worked?" she asked, turning back and forth. Tyler thought she looked so damn cute and noticed Connor's reaction. He bit his lip, held her waist, and smirked. He knew he was thinking the same thing. "Just wait a few minutes," he said, and Layla nodded. Suddenly the door opened, and Bailey, Alex, Cassidy, and Cody rushed inside, closing the door behind them. "Are you guys all right?" asked Cassidy, setting down her bag, and Tyler nodded. "Then why did you call for us?" "Assembly starts in 15 minutes, said Bailey, and he scoffed. Layla smiled at Connor, realizing she called her pack, and he looked at her proudly. "You did well, babe." She blushed, and he squeezed her hips. "Yeah, my dad's announcing he's head of the school and what he expects from his students. Trust me, he won't miss us," said Tyler, and Faith rubbed his arm. "So, we're not going to the assembly?" First Alex, looking at Connor, and Connor shook his head. There was a knock at the door, and everyone looked at each other. "Who could that be?" asked Bailey, and Cassidy shrugged. "Hello? Are there any students in there?" I heard voices. Called the teacher from behind the door, and Cassidy's eyes widened. "What are we going to do?" whispered Bailey as they heard keys. Layla and Connor looked at each other and nodded. Connor pulled Bailey, Alex, and Cassidy close and wrapped his wings around them. Tyler, Faith, and Cody ran to Layla, and the flaming dragon wings hid them from the world. Tyler looked around at the red and orange feathers with gold trim and blew a breath. "Wow, Lay, this is beautiful," he whispered, and Layla pulled him close and put her finger on his lips. She mouthed the words, "Shut up," and he smirked, nodding. They heard the suite room door open and footsteps. "Hello, anyone in here? Dearies, the assembly is about to start," said the teacher. There was no answer. The woman checked the rooms inside. "I could have sworn I heard someone talking," she breathed, looking at the strange statues in the corner. "Those are a little creepy," she muttered and grabbed the handheld radio from her hip. "Suite 104 is clear." They heard the teacher leave and lock the door. Connor and Layla waited a few moments, and their wings disappeared. "That was so cool," whispered Bailey, and Alex agreed. "Don't you think some of us should go to the assembly and see what's on Peter's agenda?" asked Cody. Tyler and Connor looked at each other, and Connor thought momentarily. "That's not a bad idea," he said, and Tyler agreed. "But who stays and who goes?" asked Faith. "Why don't Bailey and I take Cody and Alex, and you guys can stay here?" suggested Cassidy, and Layla tilted her head. "Why don't we all go?" she asked. Tyler scoffed, sat on the couch, and kicked his feet up on the coffee table. "I'm not going, but you guys are more than welcome to go," he said, grinning, and Layla snickered. Faith walked toward him and joined him on the couch. "I'm not going if you're not going," she said. He smiled, popped a piece of gum in his mouth, and put his arm around her shoulders. "I could think of plenty of ways to spend our time," he said, and she snickered. Suddenly, a high-pitched noise rang in Connor's and Layla's ears, making them double over, grab their heads, and groan. "Layla!" Tyler exclaimed, jumping off the couch. She grabbed handfuls of her hair and cried, shaking her head. "I can't fight it," she sobbed. Her wings appeared, and she bolted out the window, spraying glass everywhere. Alex and Cody shielded Bailey and Cassidy, but luckily, the glass didn't hurt them. Connor growled, shaking back and forth, spread his wings, and flew after Layla. Tyler and Faith looked at each other wide-eyed. "That's it!" Cassidy yelled in frustration, and Bailey, Alex, Cody, Tyler, and Faith looked at her in surprise. Cody pulled her hair behind her shoulder and rubbed her neck. "I'm sick of cleaning up after them. They can clean it up when they get back to wherever they flew off to. Now we have an assembly to get to," she said, grabbed Cody's hand, and stalked out of the room. Alex and Bailey quickly smiled at Tyler and Faith and chased after them. The great hall was full of students and faculty awaiting the headmaster's announcement. Cassidy, Cody, Bailey, and Alex sat in the back row of black folding chairs and watched Peter walk out onto the small wooden stage, where some students gasped and whispered to each other, and Alex chuckled. Bailey bumped his leg with her knee, and Alex rested his arm on the back of her chair. He grinned, and she shook her head. "Student and staff of Edgewood University, thank you for joining me. I send my deepest condolences about the start of this school year. This has been the worst year in centuries, but I plan to change that. Headmistress Tate is no longer with us, and I am taking her place as head of this school." Peter smirked, pacing the stage, noticing Tyler wasn't with his friends. "My goal now is to keep you and our home safe, and by no means are we safe right now. When my wife resurrected me unknowingly, she let something else in. The remaining 2 alpha sparks, he said, and some students and faculty members gasped. The red-haired witch who hit on Connor raised her hand, and Peter pointed to her and nodded. Yes, miss? Halliwell. Loren Halliwell. If she let the sparks in, then that's a good thing, right? I mean, the alpha sparks are Edgewood's protectors, she said, and Peter nodded. Yes, Miss Halliwell, you're absolutely right. But if the alpha sparks came to Edgewood, then I fear something dark came with them. He sighed. The crowd looked at each other and started talking at once. Peter waved his hands and everyone looked at him. I have a plan to lure the alpha sparks and the darkness to come to us, and we can send the hellish thing back to where it came from. You may be surprised at my methods, but just know that this is for the safety of the school. Cassidy, Bailey, Alex, and Cody looked at each other and wondered what he meant by luring them. So, Mr. Tate, what is your plan? Asked Lauren's sister, Brenda. Brenda was the blonde-haired witch, and Raven was the brunette. The 3 were sisters and came from a rich and powerful witch coven. Peter gave the 3 witches a thoughtful look, smiled, and whistled.